On.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the writer's class I'm going to go with because this is poetry, right?
I know, right? But also the women's cave, or maybe even the ladies' hell podcast. But let's talk about it. We're going to be talking about a podcast, talking about poetry. You know, we got to talk about that.
No, it's the writing closet.
Well,
it's poetry. Poetry to me is just like literary.
Really? Well, no, we write
we write poetry. My bad. Poetry to me is fun.
Oh my goodness. Like sometimes I cannot take Winona. Like I love her. But sometimes I'm Jade.
Oh, and I'm Winona. Thank you. Thank you for remembering to introduce us. Can we do the high five?
I mean, I guess I can high five. Oh,
social distance.
Yeah, because we're still out here, y'all. But anyway. I'm just saying, like, how are you gonna talk about poetry so bad? Like, this is not how we make our money.
I have nothing to say in response.
My whole career, let me just be like, it's awful, y'all.
I'm going to move on to the books of poetry that I forgot we write.
Okay, y'all, it's definitely Friday. I think maybe she's vibing a little too early. I'm just saying. We wrote literary life guides with pop poetry, and I thought divorce was bad with other life lessons, and I thought being grown-up was easy. If only I were me, a memoir and verse. And then for the genre,
my books are Widow's Web, suspense, and Foreign Coffee, romance. All of those are available on
where you get your audio books, right? Because it's summertime, y'all. You might want to just be listening and not reading. But if you just want to read about us and find out more stuff about your ladies, it's at www.ithoughladies.com.
You can also buy the rest of the 17 books there. There you go. So yeah. But anyway, I think that's enough about me.
Right.
I mean, us. Yeah, wow. I have to include you in my narcissism. I keep forgetting that. This is enough about us. We have a wonderful guest today.
Wonderful guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Daniel J. Hees, the Pen Click Point Man, aka Pomona's resident chubby punk rock idiot, aka out here on your show. God bless you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So thank you for coming on. Like, of course, we had to have you on. Poetry and a podcast, yeah, that has to happen.
And you're cool. Apparently, that's what everyone wrote in the comments, that they're very cool. So I was like, I wanted to get rid of some of my nerdness.
All right. I appreciate that.
Pen Click it started.
Yes, absolutely.
So Pen Click started out of frustration, really. I'm a poet. Just as I'm a poet, I've been writing my whole life. I've loved poetry my whole life. From going to like the public library with moms when I was little to discovering my own library, right? And then just I've always written poetry. I've always done poetry. I didn't really perform a lot of poetry, but I come from in Pomona, California. There is an open mic that just retired after 20 years called a Mic and Dim Lights. It was founded by Best Kept, Corey Kofer, and James Brady, DJ James JB, pardon me. And that open mic was a beacon out here. I'm in LA, but I'm in the burbs, right? So it was hard to go to LA to do art things. So they created this venue. And I come up from that school, which is a very loving, supportive community. The spoken word community is beautiful in Southern California. And we kind of had our own special thing in Pomona where we were really just kids that grew up here that were doing it because we loved it. And I loved poetry. Cut to I'm a producer, I'm an engineer, an audio engineer. I've worked in a lot of different creative avenues professionally, so theater, musical theater, music, film, radio, all of those things. And I wasn't seeing those skills being put into poetry. There wasn't a lot of people investing that skill set into poetry. So whenever asked to do an event with Kuya David, who's my co-host, the Pen Click Prime Minister, he's also our creative director and our lead designer. So all the pretty shiny things you see on Pen Click, that all comes right out of David's brilliance. But we met up to do an event. David was kind of testing the waters on doing some of that same content that I had just talked about, where he was like, you know what, I'm a designer. I want to put some of my design skills into poetry. And I said, yo, I'm an engineer. I'm thinking the same thing. So we worked for about a year, just kind of figuring out what we wanted to see in poetry, what we wanted to try and offer poets. And as a poet, it was really nice because I understand the struggles. To be a professional poet is kind of a misnomer in our society, and that really is on us as poets to change and grow the way that people see poetry, right? So that has been our main mission with PenClick since the beginning. Try and show poetry in a marketable way, in the same way that we see hip hop marketed, in the same way that we see film marketed. Let's try and market poetry in a unique way. And the brilliance of it is the community is strong enough to where it was just as easy as like, all right, I got 12 dope homies that we could like put on, so let's just do that. Let's put our homies on, but let's do it with as much polish and respect that we would do if we were getting paid thousands of dollars to do it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
I love that you guys were willing to make a personal investment with your skills into poetry, which everyone says does not sell.
So how are you proving that wrong?
I mean, and it's hard. It's been an uphill battle from the beginning, right? Trying to build new market with poetry, trying to change the way that people view poetry. So many kids see poetry, and that was a big thing for me. Like, I wanted to be able to show my homies that were needed poetry, right? There's a lot of kids out there that are stuck in the trap, that are stuck in the cycles, and they need arts, they need poetry. And you try and expose your friends to these things, and they roll their eyes because they don't got time for that, right? Like, I don't got time for poetry. So we wanted to package poetry in a way that would break through that and show like people that needed to hear it, people that wouldn't necessarily enjoy poetry, to package it in a way to where they would embrace it and discover it, and maybe even like write their own poetry or support poetry, right? Like, that is the thing. And we have waves of that in our culture, but it is a black art. It isn't being properly held up because of that. Like, that is something to consider. The media does, the poetry is powerful, and people know that. And now in our world, those same gatekeepers don't have as much power. So if we can add this polish, make this marketable, get a check from Red Bull to do a poetry event, right? That's our goal. If we could get major marketing brands to invest in poetry so that we could pay poets, that's the mission. But that's been a hard mission. It's been hard. All we've done, all we could do, we've had great success in the content we're making, um, but we are still at that place where we are trying to catch a lick, because we need cash, we need money, we need a team at this point to continue to grow this. So PenClick's in a constant state of reassessing and growing, and trying to just keep it pushing the best we can.
You sound like us.
I'm like, oh my goodness. It sounds like us. Sounds
Always.
always.
Every Friday, let's reassess. No, I'm joking. Where are our new goals? So I found you an odd way. I think I discussed how I found your name, which was, I was looking at the top 10 best poet podcasts, and all of them were very literary, which I love literary. It has its place. But then your name was at the bottom, so and all the comments was like, this cannot be a real list. Every list I look at with less this pin click involved. So my question quickly was, how do you kind of respond to this, with you being outside of what you would consider the literary medium?
Yeah, that's been something we've tried to embrace, because I come from literary poetry first. So that's kind of where I discovered poetry, was just reading poetry books. So I grew a love for all of that early and first. And then I found spoken word was huge too, because deaf poetry. So we were young, and when I was in junior high, deaf poetry was on. So that was huge for me, like being a backpacker and like a punk rock kid. Like, music was my life. It is my life. It's always been what keeps me going, my medicine, my the fuel. So to find an extension of that in poetry, and to have all of that, um, my basis was the literary world. And then I started doing performance poetry because I was encouraged to. Um, and we also had things like deaf poetry to draw upon. So with PenClick, we've tried to kind of assess both. So I come from spoken word, so the majority of our poets are spoken word poets and activists and things like that. But we have made a clear intention in every season of Pen Click to include at least one or two literary poets, just because we want to add the same value. And to go back to your point, that was a lot of the genesis of Pen Click was, yo, why isn't there content that isn't at best it's stuffy literary host with somebody we're excited to see on get put on, right? Like a spoken word artist that like, oh, yo, they're getting the attention they deserve. But then they have this weird interview with this out of touch person who doesn't understand them and almost like it feels almost like tokenism at times where it's like, oh, we're doing this thing as a literary thing to reach out, and like it just doesn't, it didn't feel genuine. It felt stuffy, it felt weird. So that was a lot of it for Pen Click too. Let's talk in our own voice. Let's allow poets to speak in their own voice. That was a big discussion we had where it was like, I have those communication skills as well, where I could turn on the, hi, I'm Daniel Hees, nice to, and do that whole bit. But let's do this in our own voice. Let's offer that to poets, but let's also offer that to the literary world. And let's have literary poets on and see how they react on the other end. We've seen time and time again these literary heads that are having this survivalist poet on, right? That use this as medicine and motivation to get through life. And they're so out of touch and out of reach. Like, let's flip that now where it's like, yo, all right, like you're a literary poet, but like, what's real with it, what is, let's get vulnerable, let's get like deep, let's peel away that academic thing that a lot of us carry in academia, and like let's get real with it. So we're trying to include the literary world, and we're also trying to hold this a higher standard for literary podcasts, for spoken word podcasts, for DIY amateur poets, for professional touring like this is, we're trying to be the new standard. Like this is possible, y'all. It can look like this, it can feel like this, it can flow like this. You just got to do the work.
I love this. I love this immensely. It feels like you're already where we would love to be.
or not, because we don't have that professional.
No, we don't have that professional spoken word thing. We are one of those dying breeds where we are professional poets. Like that is our bread and butter, and that that makes our life. Like, yeah. Everyone goes, "Are you for real?" And we're like, "Yeah." And they're like, yeah. I've never met one, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I got a couple of those back pocketed poems too, where it's like, oh, you're a poet, you're a professional poet, do a poem. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's part of it too. Like we got to change the public opinion and how the public views poets, and we have to do that by building market. And part of that is a little bit of like, yo, like we take ourselves super seriously all the time as poets, and we should be reverent of like the griot tradition and like what the actual place of poetry is and the evolution of it and all of that. But I wanted to show people what poets were like after the open mic was over. You feel me? Like that's what I wanted to show them. Like what we were like when the six of us were there putting away chairs and we all just like snuck in the alley and blew something in the alley. And you know what I'm saying? Like now we're like all just vibing in the poetry spot. And that's what I wanted to show people, because that I think builds market. That makes it, that's a brand interest. That's world poets are often more interesting than their poetry, and that is like a fact. So let's show people both, because that's where we're really going to hook them.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely believe that.
So now my last question, because Jade's going to finish up the questions, is so what do you have to say about the boom of pop poetry, and do you consider Pen Click and what it does as part of that culture, or do you think it just has like that massive still respect?
I've never heard that word, pop poetry.
We're pop poets.
Okay. And how would you define that?
Oh, okay.
Someone just named us pop poets.
No, we named ourselves. What are you talking about?
Okay.
That we were, and we were like, I know you mean that as an insult.
Yeah, they do.
But we take that as a nice thing. Thank you. So how we like to explain it is, we may not be the Billie Holidays of the world, because let's be honest.
We're not going to have a poem where you're going to spend a year meditating line by line on what it could mean.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But so we're more like the Ariana Grande
of the world. We do poetry according to life how we see it, and
And
life
culture.
how and culture how it is told to us, and that's how we do our pop poetry.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand. No, that's beautiful. That was a lot of in PenClick's early development. That was a lot of the conversation we were having because we both come from the hip hop community, and it was hard because we I love hip hop in every incarnation, from like Pete Rock and like Run DMC to Young Thug and Flocka. You feel me? Like I love all of this, and it was weird to hear a lot of the old heads come out against trap music and what all of that meant and the reverence we should have and all of that. And they're telling this to kids, and kids, that is not inspiring kids to go do the work of researching the greats, right? So that's been a big part of like what we try and do at PenClick is not take ourselves seriously, offer poets an avenue to express however they will, whatever they will, showcase poets that we believe in, right? But it's you there is pushback there, and we've gotten a lot of that. We've gotten I'm of mixed race. I'm a white boy, you feel me? I'm half Chicano, I'm half Mexican, so I'm native, but there was pushback there, right? There's been pushback about knowing the history and respecting the history. There's been pushback from the literary world about what we're doing, and you could check the receipts, and that's really what it is. Like I come from this community, I do this because I love it. There is no like we're not faking the funk, like and that's important as well, that people, I mean, because you don't, it is important to protect this culture and this community because it can and will get exploited. But we are in a place now with the arts and the black arts specifically, right? The soul of America is the black arts. The redeeming part of our country's history will tell is the black arts, right? So people have time and time again exploited that and come in and manipulated it and done what they will, or tried to at least, right? And poetry is one of those things where we have complete control now. We don't, again, need those gatekeepers. So we can really preserve the history and the community and the culture while still being pop poets or whatever it will be. Like the reality of it is we're human and there's a spectrum to all of this. And again, I wanted to show the world because I come from that tradition of um, like the griot tradition and the spoken word tradition, where we're going to do these super powerful pieces about activism and race relations and the suffering and struggling that goes along with that. But then we're also going to get high afterwards and bullshit. You feel me? And like, I want to show people that because we're human, and it's often poets are dismissed as just being a poet, and they're not allowed to be human, and they're not allowed to write about silly things or frivolous things or fun things. Like we are all involved in a struggle, an ongoing struggle in our country. And it is important that we are always reverent of the history of that and how it applies to our craft, right? Poetry. But it is also important that we offer people escapism and moments of relief and a reason to laugh and all of that because it's hard work. And we don't fight and suffer so that we could fight and suffer. We fight and suffer for so we could live in joy, right? So that is the point. So yeah, I love that. We're pop. Yeah, throw us right into the pop poetry circle. I love it.
Yo, come on
We're
over. We're pop poet. Come on over.
Together.
Welcome to the dark side.
That's
Hey.
actually the professor, and that's what he calls it, the dark side.
Yeah.
Dark side of
y'all,
literature.
y'all just the dark side of literature. Absolutely. Absolutely. But let's be honest. And I'm going to say it as you're saying it, like you're doing the work that you do is very important, right? Because somebody is going to engage with the work that you're doing because they're like, oh, this is fun and heaven, I love it. But then once you're in the door, they're gonna be like, well, what are these other poets about? Because let's be honest, the reason I started reading was because I read a book by Mickey Spillane, Black Alex. And had I never read that book, I would have never read. And then I would have read for school, obviously, but I would have never fallen in love with libraries. And I would have never read what people call the greats, like, The Great Gatsby. I would have never read that for fun. I would have never done it if I hadn't read one book for fun. So I think it's the same point with poetry. Like, we go to school and you learning to take apart this poem and you're just super sad and mad about it because you don't want to write a 5-page essay on this poem, this one poem, and you don't understand that it's so much more than that. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're so happy you're doing it. Where can people find out more about your podcast? And also, I need to
Oh
ask
wait,
you.
I didn't ask my narcissism question. Can I be on your podcast? Go ahead, Sid.
Well, no,
No,
no. I had a really good point. Like I was super somber and professional.
You were.
Oh,
came in our
you messed
voice.
it up. You messed it
It's
up.
the
Well, no,
hair.
it's the hair.
Because my hair is so cute today.
Oh my god, I can't. I just really. Anyway,
Moving on to your question.
yeah. So where can people find out more about your podcast? Also, what are two pieces of advice that you would give young poets or people that want to get into poetry? What would you tell them to do?
Word. Okay. To answer both y'all questions, yeah, we're gearing up for season. We are doing season 3 this fall. So, yeah, we'll be in talks about guests and all of that. I'd love to have y'all on. Yeah, and we luckily the pandemic has, if anything good out of it, it taught us to do things remotely. So we are doing Pen Click worldwide now, which is a new thing as opposed to just doing it in the LA scene. But you could find everything I'm doing, Daniel J. Hees, penclick.net. That is the website. Go on. We're on every major podcast platform. We're on YouTube. YouTube's the real fun show because it's a lot of visuals and flashy things and all of that. So it's a fun show to watch. But everything's PENCLIQUE, Penclick. So penclick.net, all major podcast platforms. YouTube's like the big thing. Instagram at Penclick. We do a lot. We're kind of in a hiatus right now because we're gearing up to do season 3, and we were just doing a lot of online content, and we just kind of needed a breather again. We're trying to reformulate and refuel and do all of that, but we will be back this fall, early next spring, with a new season, with new poets, with maybe some old poets, but the same polish, the same everything we're doing. You could find my personal work on YouTube. I mean, Daniel Hees poetry. If you search that, you could find spoken word that I've done and things like that on there. And then, yeah, I mean, we got some exciting things in the works. So, yeah, go follow us on PenClick and check it out. And again, YouTube is the show. And maybe next year, this time, y'all be seeing you guys on PenClick. That might be happening.
Oh, yay! Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Um, and as far as advice, there's a couple things that I tell everybody. One, especially young poets, start now, start early, write a lot, right? You're going to have a lot. The big thing that are the two big things that artists never tell anybody is that one, a lot of, if not all of their early work is garbage, and two, 80% of my work is garbage. It's not about quantity versus quality. It's not like some grand puzzle piece. Just write as much as you can, write early so that in 5 years you're better than you would be if you didn't do all of that. And it's not a secret, it's not a magic trick, it's not some crazy thing. It's just a matter of writing, and writing a lot, write every day, discipline yourself to this craft. And the second advice would be read the greats, like know your history, know where, especially as Black writers, know what the griot tradition is, know what the Watts prophets and the last poets did for poetry, for rap music, right? I host and I help produce and engineer a poetry show on the radio out here. And the host Beth Kep and JB, it's called Beats and Poems. It's kspc.org. You guys can find that there as well. Every Thursday night, Beats and Poems. Check it out, West Coast time. But he played.
That was perfectly done.
Yeah, that was perfectly done.
I'm sorry.
God bless.
I've messed up your flow.
No, it's all good. Yeah. But yeah, know your greats. No, we recently aired the last poets did a piece, and it's with drums, and it's in the late 60s, right? And like that is often credited as the birth of hip hop, the first time that rhythm and poetry was melded in the community. So know your history, read a lot of poetry, read everyone, and don't just stick to um the greats, right? Find the greats, but let that lead you places. Because again, there's a lot of things that they wouldn't have you know about, right? We know they don't mention a lot of and powerful, impactful Black artists in this country for a reason. So go find them, because that's what we need right now. Like, again, the history, you will learn a lot, and it will give you the food, the sustenance you need to create brilliance, to create the things that you want to see happen in the world and your work.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's a great place to wrap this up.
Well, yeah, so I'll just go ahead and do that. Yeah, you find out everything you. Oh, well, first, thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate it. You can find out everything you ladies are doing on www.andithoughtLadies.com. While you're there, go to the bottom of the page to see the charities that we probably support. Maybe you can support them also. That would be really awesome. And just remember, wisdom is all around you if
you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Will Nona
and Jade. Bye bye. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.